Have you noticed how the world right now feels incredibly interconnected, but also, extremely fragile? Well, welcome to today's explainer. We're going to take things nice and slow today, speaking clearly so we can really break down how a localized conflict, thousands of miles away in the Middle East, is actively and directly inflating the price of gas at your local pump, and honestly, even the final tally on your grocery receipt. Let's connect those dots. Here is our roadmap for today. We're going to look at the global oil choke point, the sudden supply shock, the economic chain reaction, the central bank nightmare, the differing impacts on the US versus the UK, and finally, what to watch next. All right, Section 1, the global oil choke point, the epicenter of the crisis. Because to really understand the economics here, we first have to understand the geography. And our epicenter is a very specific stretch of water known as the Strait of Hormuz, sitting right between Iran and Oman. Now, I want you to really focus on this number, 21. At its very narrowest point, the Strait of Hormuz is only 21 miles wide. And the actual navigable shipping lanes within it, they're even tighter than that. Think about a 21-mile drive in your local area. It's incredibly small, right? But through that tiny 21-mile gap, roughly 1/5 of the entire world's oil and refined fuel must pass. Just let that sink in for a second. 1/5 of global supply. We're talking crude from Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Kuwait, Qatar, all of it squeezing through this one narrow channel. And unfortunately, there is just no easy detour. Pipelines around the Gulf can only carry a tiny, tiny fraction of what normally moves by these massive tankers. Moving to Section 2, the sudden supply shock. Where did the oil go? You see, when tensions between Israel and Iran escalated into open conflict, one of the absolute most immediate casualties was this very oil supply, 10 to 11 million barrels. Forecasters estimate that at the absolute peak of the conflict, this massive amount of Middle Eastern daily output was essentially just knocked out. Whether it was from direct action or simply because insurance companies flat out refused to cover the ships trying to pass through, the supply didn't just dip, it dropped incredibly sharply. To put that into perspective, that disrupted supply represents roughly 1 out of every 10 barrels the entire world uses on a daily basis. Gone. Almost overnight. And because it happened so fast, energy agencies were forced to heavily draw down global oil inventories. Our global safety net is shrinking toward levels we literally haven't seen in 2 decades. And this overnight loss, it triggered immediate market chaos. Back in early July, Brent crude was sitting in the high 60s. But by late July, renewed attacks pushed it way past $100 a barrel. Now, well, we're kind of chopping around the low to mid-80s. But the absolutely crucial point here isn't just that oil is expensive, it's the whiplash. This unpredictability is absolute poison for business forecasting and for central banks trying to plan out our economic future. Which brings us to Section 3, the economic chain reaction, from the Gulf to your wallet. Now, you might be wondering, I don't buy barrels of crude oil, so why should I even care? Well, let's slowly trace exactly how this hits you directly. Step 1 is immediate. The price of gasoline, diesel, and jet fuel jumps. That directly hits your commute and your next flight. But step 2 is where it really sneaks up on the broader economy. Oil is a foundational raw input. When crude goes up, the cost of moving shipping containers, running manufacturing plants, producing plastics, all of that rises. And finally, step 3, companies pass those costs on to us. It becomes your price, your plane ticket, and your higher grocery bill. Okay, Section 4, the central bank nightmare, the threat to interest rates. Because as prices for literally everything go up, the people in charge of our money supply are put into a very, very difficult position. I want to introduce you to a word that literally keeps economists awake at night: stagflation. It's a scenario where an economy experiences weak growth and high inflation at the exact same time. You see, institutions like the Federal Reserve or the Bank of England, they were finally hoping to cut interest rates because inflation was cooling down. But this sudden oil shock, it reignites that inflation. It forces central banks to hold interest rates higher for longer just to fight rising prices, which means your mortgages and car loans stay expensive, risking a broader economic slowdown. Let's look at Section 5, US versus UK impacts, an asymmetrical shock. The IMF recently issued a warning about this exact crisis, noting that this is an asymmetrical shock, which basically just means it doesn't hit everyone equally. The fallout looks very, very different depending on where you happen to live. So the United States has significantly ramped up its own domestic oil production, and that creates a bit of an economic cushion. Conversely, the UK and Europe rely heavily on imported energy. So without that large domestic cushion, their households take a much more direct, much more painful hit to their energy bills when global prices spike.
But even within the US, the stock market impact is wildly uneven. Energy giants like Exxon and Chevron actually tend to benefit when crude prices go up. On the flip side, airlines and shipping companies get severely squeezed by those exact same fuel costs. And consumer discretionary businesses, they suffer too, because squeezed consumers simply have a lot less cash to spend.
Now, back across the Atlantic, the UK faces an incredibly tough tightrope. Because global oil is priced in US dollars, a weakening British pound essentially inflates the cost of imported oil even further. It's a brutal double whammy: expensive oil multiplied by poor currency exchange rates.
Finally, Section 6. What to watch next, navigating the uncertainty. Let's focus on some practical takeaways so you understand exactly what to look out for in the coming months.
Here are 3 key strategies to keep in mind. First, keep a close eye on diplomatic headlines, specifically around the Strait of Hormuz. That one tiny 21-mile choke point is driving all this volatility. A ceasefire brings prices down, and escalation shoots them right back up. Second, monitor the upcoming inflation reports in the US and UK. If the Fed or the Bank of England pause their rate cuts, that immediately impacts mortgage rates and stock values. And third, and just a quick reminder here that this explainer is strictly for education, not personalized financial advice, nobody can perfectly predict oil prices. Nobody. This is exactly why a diversified portfolio is so absolutely crucial, rather than trying to time unpredictable commodity swings.
I want to leave you with this final, provocative thought to consider today. How insulated are your own finances from the world's most vulnerable shipping lanes? It is honestly incredible how a narrow stretch of water can ripple all the way into our daily lives. Thank you so much for taking the time to learn with us today. If you appreciated this clear, slow-paced breakdown of what's moving the world, make sure to subscribe, and I will see you in our next explainer.